Well, as lockdown has been lifted to level 2, people preparing for their happy matrimonial day won't be able to have more than 50 guests at their wedding, which may, of course, take some of the stress out of the question, large or small. There are other rules, like setting up sanitizing stations and wearing masks. And what about the traditional wedding kiss? The COGTA spokesperson, Lungi Mchali, explains there's nothing in the regulations that prohibits that. So, of course, the bride and groom can take off their masks for a short while and kiss. Well, the Bhekisisa editor, the editor of the Bhekisisa Centre for Health Journalism, Mia Malan, joins us now. Mia, good evening to you. What do the regulations actually say?
50 people at your wedding, so people getting married during level 2 will only be able to have really small weddings. And as you've mentioned, the regulations stipulate very clearly that everyone has to wear a mask. And those stations that you mentioned, the screening stations that have to be set up at the entrance of a wedding, the person manning them will not be allowed to let in anyone without a mask. And when you look at the regulations, you've mentioned, can the groom kiss the bride? They're really not specific. The regulations does not mention a kiss, and it doesn't mention that you can make an exception other than when guests eat or drink to take off your mask. But the spokesperson of the Department of Cooperative Governance has said that he really is pretty sure that there will be an exception and that the government's intention is not to control a ceremony but just to make it safe.
I just can't imagine the court case that would come out of that one. The wedding industry itself, I mean, hugely impacted by the lockdown, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's been quite devastating because of the range of professionals that are involved in the wedding industry. It's from hairstylists and beauty therapists to clothing manufacturers and jewelers and makeup artists and photographers. And there has been enough people being upset in the wedding industry for the Association of Wedding Professionals to have threatened the government with a court case in July. And they were particularly unhappy because the fact that level 3 regulations allowed for religious gatherings and for funerals of 50 people, but not for weddings in the same religious venues, they found was very unfair.
And wedding ceremonies, do you think they're going to change or adapt during COVID-19? I mean, I know some people who try not to let smartphones into weddings. Now, if you want grandmother to come, you're going to have to let her watch it through a Zoom call.
Yes, there have been quite a few Zoom weddings in some countries where a couple would get married in an empty church with a person who officiates them and guests would then join via Zoom. But a local company in KwaZulu-Natal has started a different way of having weddings where they call them drive-in weddings, and there's been quite a few in level 3. And it's a wedding where a couple would get married in a garden under a gazebo, and the guests would then park in cars in a circle around the gazebo and witness the ceremony, and the company would then serve the guests with picnic baskets. That would be their food at the wedding. But on a more serious note, wedding planners online are now recommending a la carte menus instead of buffets to make social distancing easier, and there will also be smaller tables, and wedding and table plans may be arranged around households rather than friends, so that there's a lower chance of infection. And for dancing, which obviously makes social distancing very difficult, they're starting to recommend silent discos, where guests would each have a headphone with the same music playing and then dance, but 2 meters apart from each other.